Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It was supposed to be a busy week of videos, but the day that I actually finished the Relic, which was Thursday, which I know some of you may find sickening, I got some news from back in New Jersey, and then I just needed a couple days off just to unwind and just kind of have some time for me and Sophie. So I just decided that, I wasn't going to work on those 2 days. I spent those days playing old school RuneScape, doing a few other things, and, just kind of hanging out and chilling and just not working. So this week, all those videos will be out. The day before this, at least one of those videos will be out, maybe two of them. So by the time you see this, I may have released 3 videos from last week. And then the Fianna video is going to be its own separate thing. We should be getting Monster Hunter details at TGS later this month. And there's a few other videos that I want to work on for the coming week. So, yeah, we'll be having... This week's going to be what? So if I don't have it out before this, it'll be my thoughts on the Relic, my thoughts on the appearance of every Relic, since I can look at the vendor. That video will definitely be out before this. My thoughts on Fianna. And then from there, I might catch up on some other videos. I do have some series that I'd like to start working on as well. I've really just had a lot of life events just kind of distracting me or just pulling my attention in such ways that I don't really feel like I can sit down and really do a big recording session for a lot of these things. So yeah, that's been tough. But I have plenty of ideas. That's the worst thing, is I have plenty of ideas. I just, the focus isn't there at the moment. You know what I mean? So I'm going to see about getting around to at least one of those. People keep asking about the 11 series. It's not over. I just literally haven't had time to sit down and really work on something like that for a long period of time. It's why I really want to do like a Final Fantasy 11 stream. Like, instead just transition it to being like a stream day that I do like once every 2 weeks, and then I get a bunch of recordings done, and then I'm like way ahead of it. It's going to be a busy next 2 months of streaming between, the, what's it called? Pilgrim's Traverse, Monster Hunter collab on the other side, because I do plan on fighting Omega, Trails in the Sky First Chapter Remake, Final Fantasy Tactics, Evilise Chronicles, and then that's me just looking at this month, October. Oh yeah, and then the end of October has Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I actually kind of forgot that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 is in October and not November, because it's basically at the end of October. God, I didn't even remember how many releases there are in October. It's just a wild time right now. Also, don't worry, I just started wearing compression gloves because I do this a lot. I crack my wrists. And I was like, maybe I should wear something and see if that reduces my need to do that, or if it makes things more comfortable. I'm in a testing period with these. So far, honestly, I haven't really noticed a difference with having compression gloves on. I see plenty of people use them, but I think I just get more distracted because I end up just being fixing them like this when they're a little crinkly. Bro, that autism brain is just... There's no solution, let's be honest. This is probably a tick more than it is me just needing to get comfortable or whatever. Now I do the same thing with my shoulders and whatnot. I'm a big cracker, when it comes to different body parts and whatnot. That being said, for this video, I'm probably only gonna do a few questions that are not edited, if any at all. I just want to kind of get through it. I've been out of it for 2 days. It's 6:43 in the morning, and I was like, let me just get it done. Let's just get this done right now on Sunday and make sure that I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, we'll probably do very minimal editing on this part so I can get to recording the Relic video and make sure that I actually get the content that I want to get out this week. All right, so with that, thanks everyone for asking your questions. Don't forget, you can ask questions in the comment section for any given episode. We don't have a Magic Spoon sponsor this week, but we do have Steel Series, of course. I'm probably going to be recording a very ad-like Steel Series thing to put in some videos soon, just because they don't sponsor any individual video. They haven't asked me to do that, but I said it months ago, and it's one of those things that I got distracted from. They've supported the channel for a long time, so they're the sponsor, kind of. So I definitely, with everything that's been going on, with the less work I've been getting done, I kind of want to overcompensate a little bit and do that. So if you ever need anything, ask the questions in the comment section. If you already know you want them, I have a link. I have a discount code. Be sure to go give those a peek. And of course, thanks to our patrons over at Patreon. As a heads up, I might start. So YouTube has channel membership, and Patreon has its own separate thing. And I really want to actually recompile the list and make it a normal thing. For a while, I was leaving patrons on like the end of State of the Realm, but I really just want to double back and actually get a name list out there so I can more accurately do that again. It was tough because some people have their real names on like their YouTube or on Patreon, and I don't want to put those without telling them. But all the same, I feel like I've slacked on that. I've slacked on a lot of things. I've been again. Well, I'll get into it because trust me, the thing that happened, I'll be able to talk about it soon, because it does involve you know what, and I'm just kind of waiting in this regard before I can speak on it more, because that's a situation that needs. I don't think it needs a whole lot of updating, but it does need some updating. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I've already made this intro too long. Let's get to the Q&A. Thanks, everyone, for supporting, and let's get started. All right, we're going to do the editing. I'm going to commit. Let's not be lazy. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Haps. Hi, I hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Let's play a new game plus an Elpis and came across something interesting. When Hermes was telling Emmett Sulk about Kairos, Emmett Sulk said something about Pastrot wanting to take a look at the device. It was a mere throwaway line. Then it clicked for me. Did Pastrot abscond with Kairos and give Calyx Kairos, a device that can alter or delete memories? See, someone was paying attention. This whole Pastrot thing has not come out of absolutely nothing. It hasn't. Both their position, their position and the convocation. We talked about that a little bit with Jesse when we had him on State of the Realm, and we talked about that theory. There's the Pastrot symbol appears in a lot of places. They're one of the few remaining, so you don't really have too many choices. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of context clues when it comes to Pastrot being the main Ascian that's going to be involved with all this. Now, I don't think Pastrot is like the Endsinger equivalent. I think that there's something else happening. I think a lot of people think Ultima the High Seraph is somehow behind a lot of this. But Pastrot, at the very least, in the immediate future, probably the next Ascian that we're actually dealing with. So, good eye. Good catch. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Question regarding the Days of Yore with 14. Questions up front, context below. How are the A Realm Reborn and Heavensward relics received on release, and how is Eureka received on release? I feel like almost everything in Final Fantasy 14 is not well received on release. Before I even read anything, I'll get into the details, but let me actually read the context. The new Light Farm step people are calling back to A Realm Reborn and Heavensward relics, how Square should have learned from those to never do them again. I heard Eureka initially wasn't received well, and I was there for both. It's because the people who don't actually want to do relics are the ones bitching and moaning. Like, I'll just say it. It's the people who actually don't want to play Final Fantasy 14. Like, they never want to have any sort of elongated play session without getting a reward. I'm not going to lie. I feel like almost... I'm not going to say every complaint about relics should generally be thrown out. But the people who are busy doing it are usually the ones that are not complaining. You'll have people like me. Like, don't get me wrong. There are some steps where they screwed up royally. The books, especially with the way they worked in Realm Reborn, we didn't really have the same systems in place. I think if you did books now, it would work, except for fates. The whole, like, waiting 4 hours for a fate to spawn, and then it being dead in 12 seconds because it's being camped, and then maybe you don't even get gold. You got to make sure you form a party, and you actually get enough aggro on it. People didn't understand the way that fate cycled back then, but even if you did, it still had a 4-hour respawn. That wasn't any different. You still had to sit there. You had no idea when it was last spawned. You couldn't travel to another server to do any of that. So the books was definitely an overstep. The animal weapons, first post-Atma step was also not a great one on release. That was probably the only really bad step for the animal weapon on release. I'd say both of them had one notoriously, bad step. That was the books for the Zodiac weapon, and the first post-Atma step for the Anima, where you could end up doing as much as like 670 Alexander normals as like the optimal method for doing it. Yeah, those were very poorly received. After that, the light farms were generally well received. Hi, Bacon. Sorry, one of my cats is in here. Those were generally well received. And I'd say that there was like a few other steps that are like mixed, like dungeon Atmas, but those really weren't the worst. But it was very similar to the Atma grind from before, which people were scarred from. And I mean, you always hear about how Atma grinds go. I think, oh my goodness. Sorry, one of my cats was just losing his mind trapped in here. So anyway, here's the thing. We're really close to the right balance for relic stuff. I think you should have reasons to play your game and log in daily and feel like you've made some progression on something. Now, tomes technically achieve that, but I'll talk about it with the light farm step. The light farm step is the best of the steps that we've gotten this time. I think that the Shadowbringer's Relic is the best relic process we've ever had, and I don't think that this is going to outdo it for a number of reasons. The problem was that it started too late into the expansion, so it was really, really rough. It came with a mix of decent grind first time steps and repeated grinding without going too crazy repeat steps. So like you had those isolated one time and repeats, and they worked really well together. Here, they don't work as well together. The one-time steps, you know, the first one, whether you're doing it in Occult Crescent or you're doing it in Fates, I mean, it's the same as it was before. Realistically, most people it takes 20 to 30 hours to get it done. And if you get more unlucky, it's not that big of a deal. You're only doing it a single time. When it comes to the light farm step, you're guaranteed to make progress every day. The only RNG is what instance you get, and realistically, that only matters for the Alliance raid, because the Alliance raid is the one where the bonus doesn't actually offer a whole lot. But it's, again, a one-time step. After that, it's tomes. Now, I will get into it in the video, but this specific step has outlined the problem with tomes more than the step prior, specifically with the versatility of being able to use specifically roulettes and having to use roulettes versus specifically getting tomes, which you do get from roulettes, but have their own restrictions that the roulettes themselves do not have. For example, you can actually do the entire relic leveling another job when you're doing the light farm step. You don't have to use it for any other reason. You can use it as a good excuse to play some other jobs. You get a wider variety of activities. If you plan on grinding it out, you can just grind out roulettes, and you'll get, again, usually a wider array of actual instances you may not have seen before. But the leveling bonus is the big one. Also with crafting and the buying off the vendor and stuff, all of that, it's good to involve more aspects of the game, make things feel a little bit more intertwined. So, not to mention, those things just plummeted in price. You know, maybe you have to go do some fates for like an hour to get 600 stones, which is nothing. You know, I would love to be able to keep going and doing fates, or people having the encouragement to level jobs while doing their fate. Like, the fact that you are capable of doing these are not way better than the old ones, because the old ones you had to be on the job doing the activity with a weapon equipped most of the time. These don't have to be on the same job, don't have to have the weapon equipped, don't even have to be level 100. So the versatility is way higher on these ones than on the old ones. And but then when you get to tomes, you have to be on a level 100 job in order to get the tomes. So, although, well, yeah, because they're not poetics. Yeah, poetics you don't have to be on a 100 job, but to get the current tome, otherwise you do need to be on a level 100 job. So there's that. I guess a future problem, it won't have that problem, but a future problem is if you're doing relics, the animal weapons are like fucking hundreds of thousands of tomes if you want to do all of them. The Zodiac weapons cost a ton of tomes. The Manderville weapon costs. There's just too many relics just piled on the same resource, with no alternative means, or no good alternative means of actually working on them. So that's another thing. Even with the future-proof section, it only becomes future-proof if you only want one. As soon as you want more than one, it becomes a disaster when it comes to the actual tomestones that you need, unless you really like hunting, in which case, yeah, okay, you'll probably be just swimming in poetics anyway in that expansion. But yeah, I'll have a whole video coming out about this. But I'm generally of the opinion that when people don't want to do what is a relatively short grind of, on average, this one I think is on average of 25 hours, but the previous one was on average 20 to 30, unless you get really unlucky, at which point you probably should have been focusing them down in specific zones anyway. I'm just convinced those people don't actually want to play Final Fantasy XIV, and they're just looking for the shortest means of logging in, and that's actually caused problems with Final Fantasy XIV to the point where that's kind of a lot of the game in the first place. So I say fuck them. That's it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. Longtime viewer, first-time commenter, and I hope your week is going well. Hopefully the next week is. Like I said, just, I don't want to get into it. Imagine you've completed the Ether Wall step. I sure did on Thursday. By the time you read this, I have a few questions regarding phantom weapons. What are your thoughts? I mean, like I said, I'll be doing a standalone video. I was surprised to see it. This was actually something I didn't bring up in the previous question. I was surprised to see Occult Crescent wasn't an option. I think I actually ended up preferring that it wasn't an option by the time I started doing it. Because I would have just locked myself in Occult Crescent, and it would have been exactly like doing the first step. Without adding new activities, and I think this is another important lesson to learn. If you are going to tie a relic to an area, to a zone, and present it as option to do it in and without, then when you release a new step, consider releasing a new content within the location. Obviously, they could have tied it more to like pots or bunnies, which don't do that. Don't do that. Or the treasures around the map. But I think if you're going to, in the future, tie a relic to a zone and then say, hey, but you can also do it outside, instead of introducing an outside only step, come up with a new activity to incorporate into the zone and design the zone with that thought in mind in the first place. Some people are like, oh, why not Fork Tower? No, they don't include like Savage or extreme level stuff as like a main component of relics. When we do it as old content, we tend to abuse the values for things like Savages, like A9S, for example, being a really popular thing to farm for the anima weapon. A1S also came before that. But no, they were never going to tie relic progression to Forked Tower of all things. That I never expected. But I'm saying they should have designed content within Occult Crescent that was mainly for the second step, and they should think about that in the future. Any of the 7.3. I mean, technically, you can use it for the tome step because you get tomes inside of Occult Crescent. Finally, aside from the Force Tome grind, what are some steps you think we can expect to see in the future? Well, I mean, yeah, we could. I think we're gonna see 4 patches of Tombstone grind, which, I mean, hey, 6,000 tomes per weapon after you do the grind. Great. There's a few they could still do. So one big thing is what they're gonna do for 7.5 when we actually get a new zone, which will most likely, again, be tied to just doing the fates and stuff in there. I wouldn't be surprised to see a second Atma step, in all honesty. But I think they'll have us collect something closer. Like, it won't be Atmas, but it'll still be like, you know, you'll be doing fates and you'll get, like, memories, or you'll get something like that. Something very similar to what we saw in Bozia. And then for the... also, Fork Tower magic will definitely be something you can do or are expected to do, because we are going to have Fork Tower magic. That was a downside to not having the low difficulty of blood that most people didn't think about, is that CLL, Dalriada, Delubrum, they were all part of the relic step. So by not having a normal mode, we basically said, hey, that's never going to be part of the relic step, which, you know, separate problem altogether. And then they could do objective books as well. Honestly, they could do books. Like I said, books, the problem with books was always that the game didn't really have the quality of life around it, you know, so it was harder to go and do like a lower level dungeon. Like if you were a DPS and you didn't have like a tank or a healer friend to queue with, doing like, you know, one of the low level relic dungeons was terrible. It just wasn't good. And I think you also when did we get the party finder? Like, I know when I don't remember exactly which patch we got the party finder either, but it was like, it's just coordinating doing all of it sucked, and then the fates were like this massive 4-hour wait. You could easily do objective books that include objectives from Occult Crescent now, because there's really no wait for much of anything. Like, even when there is somewhat of a wait, it's not like a crazy wait, so I think that would probably be fine at this point. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Good day, Happy. Good day. I got a growing question for you. Growing or growing? Is growing a thing? While I hear some talk about downscaling and level syncing equipment, what about the possibility of upscaling equipment for at least you to be able to enter the next dungeon close to your item level? It could help people who are playing out 14 on and off, mostly for this. No, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think we should be helping people bring themselves up in gear without them actually, you know, playing and getting the gear. I don't think there's any real value in that. Like I said earlier, we already have an issue where there's a lot of people have come to expect there to be just no effort. I think if you start doing that, it's a step. We've already gone a step too far at this point, but I think that's a step too far. Hashtag MWMH. Hello, Haps. Hi. Greetings from Germany. Hi. First, thanks again for all the content you're doing. Thank you for watching. Second, what ultimate mechanic would you like to see in a Savage, a more tame version of? I mean, we've seen all of them. And there are actually Savage mechanics we haven't seen in Ultimates. There's more examples of Ultimate stuff that's already in Savage than there are examples of Savage stuff that hasn't been in Ultimate. Like, that's, man, I still keep waiting on the tripwires from Criterion. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. A lot of mechanics are also just derivative of the same idea, just presented to you differently. So no, yeah, I don't think there's a mechanic that is very particular. I guess, yeah, the Mountain Fire Valley TB is fine. It's depending on the way that they want it. I mean, realistically, to make that harder, you also move it while like either moving or not moving Valley at certain times. So like, Valley might have 2 of them lined up and then jump to the left and then look at the one in the middle first and then turn to the second one right after and fire it at a different angle. Like, yeah, you could have something like that. Or you could even just have it like mark them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just have to remember the order. And Valley will like jump between certain ones, or like will or won't. It's like jump, no jump, jump. Like, yeah. That's probably one of the few. But see, that's a tank buster that also just hasn't been anywhere else. That's only been an extreme trial, and we've never seen that literally anywhere else. So that's like a very specific example. I wasn't even thinking, because that's an extreme trial. It's not even a savage. So third, what's your opinion on ads in an ultimate? I mean, when it makes sense, it makes sense. We've really not had very many ultimates where I think having big ad phases makes a whole lot of sense. And I don't think they've been hurt because of that, to target especially. But I think unless the balance for AoEing is very close between most jobs, I think that's probably a main problem, because making it balanced as an ultimate with AoEing, if AoEs aren't super even across the board between like what jobs and how capable they are, then the imbalance in I mean, we saw it with M6. You know, I love M6, but there was pretty big imbalances, especially with the way that players actually interpreted how they should be playing their jobs in AoE scenarios. So I think it really depends on how much of it is ads that just need to have specific orders, which is probably going to work better, versus an actual like full-on needs to AoE at some point because of a mechanic ad phase where the real discrepancies kick in, and we probably don't want a repeat of that. So it's just the balance has to be really tight. That's a lot of text. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. I'm a returning player, been playing since Heaven's Ward, but dropped the game after 6.2. Played all aspects of the game except fishing because I saw what it did to people. You're correct. I wasn't planning on ever coming back, thinking Endwalker was a wonderful time to leave, but here we are years later. Always happens. I'm asking if you could provide a summary of the content I missed, excuse me, outside of the obvious MSQ and Relic grinds, and anything in particular you'd recommend. I think this is too loaded of a question for me to get. I mean, you literally just have to go to every patch note and just like look at the major content releases, because effectively you're just asking me to list out 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, Dawn Trail, 7.1, 7.2, and now 7.3. It's a lot for me to like, yeah, you missed a couple of deep dungeons. Well, you missed one, and there's a second one about to come out. So technically a couple deep dungeons, bunch of Savage Tiers, bunch of Alliance raids. I mean, technically Island Sanctuary was around when you played, so there's that. The Cosmic Exploration, the Criterion dungeons, the Variant dungeons, and then you're gonna have to go find all the unlock locations for these things anyway. I don't think it's too loaded of a question. I'll be here all day. This will be the whole video if I have to like actually go over things. But I mean, I named a few. You're just gonna have to look them up by name or go to a few patch notes. Like, you're just gonna have to look at the major patch notes and read the top in particular, because the top will be like some pieces of content, like the new Variant and Criterion dungeon and blah blah blah. Those will be in point X1 and point. You have to read the top, because the top is what tells you what's not in the major patch, so you know the names of the other things. That's too loaded. I mean, it's just too. Every blue exclamation mark you find in a game, you should just be trying to talk to anyway. That's the best advice I have. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Haps. Hi. My question is, what type of gear do you think Beastmaster will be using? Yeah, I mean, scouting or aiming. Like, it really depends, because here's the thing. Beastmaster, we now know that the Save the Queen quests, if you've done them, will have some impact on your Beastmaster, like, unlock, or the quests there. Like, there's some sort of, it's very loose, apparently, but, like, there's some sort of crossover between the two. And all of the Beastmasters there were people with axes, which would imply it could even just be like fending, in all honesty. Like, is that going to be maiming? Is that going to be fending? I don't know. They don't really look like scouting, you know what I mean? So I don't think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they have axes there. I mean, I think we'll get whips personally, and they'll just be like, oh, axes were better war weapons or something like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's fending gear, to be honest. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. I have two questions I want to ask, which are kind of similar in vein regarding how the dev informed players of new content. It feels that the average player wouldn't read through the patch notes. The other average player doesn't read the alert when they log into the game. So why isn't there an in-game way to notify players of a TLDR of what the new content of life features or new content? I feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot, relying on players to search externally. So here's the thing. We have the recommended quest menu, which if there are new unlocks, it will tell you to go do them. And 2, there are blue exclamation mark quests in city states. 3, there's other players. Now, I know I make fun of the whole please read the lodestone thing, but realistically, going in game and being like, you know, what's new to your group of friends, even if they're going to tell you it, at the very least, they pointed you in the right direction. But here's the thing. Unless you literally pop it up in front of them and tell them to go do it, like people have gotten used to with mobile games, there's no other option. And I'll be honest, if I have to log into those notifications, I'm going to be really fucking annoyed. Because those notifications, just like in mobile games, are really fucking annoying. And then that turns people off in a completely different kind of way. So if players are not interested in looking for the content that they want to do, they probably didn't care enough about it in the first place. And I don't think that we need to be helping them in this particular case. I can't lie, I always like the idea of learning about new content by bumping the players naturally doing content, which makes me wonder if there's likely for them to create OC equivalent, but overworld. There's zero chance they do anything like Occult Crescent in the overworld. I'm just going to tell you it right now. It's not going to happen. Occult Crescent and Exploration Zones, the way that they break the rules is specifically why they become instances. And if you take away these zone-specific rules, they are fates. Like, at the end of the day, that's what they are. And unless you really focus a lot of people into specific fates, they're not going to do them. Like, the only reason Guild Wars 2 fates are valuable is because their gear system is terrible. Like, they just don't progress their gear unless you're getting like ascendeds and legendaries. And even then, still, like, they literally don't gear progress. So they can just be like, oh yeah, just throw the rewards into everything. And then you just end up with a pile of 600 pieces of rare loot that you destroy for ectoplasms 99% of the time. Minus if you like meta specific things that people do want. And even then, those are rare drops. You end up usually buying them instead of getting them as a drop. So it's like, it's one of those weird situations where it's like, there are things they can do to better incentivize the overworld, putting some form of gear progression through bicolor gemstones if you want to grind them out. Like bicolor vouchers in particular, they could use for that if they feel like they need it to be worth a few more than just like, you know, the 1,500 that you can hold at once. But yeah, there's a lot of, there's pros and cons to all of it. And I think you can make the world more engaging by encouraging it, by improving its rewards, but I don't think you necessarily want to get it or need to get it to the point where it's something along the lines of like Guild Wars 2. Because then the odds are you've created a whole separate problem, and is that problem better or worse than your other problem? Questionable. Like, I've spoken to a lot of people about Guild Wars 2. I've been playing Guild Wars 2 a little bit as of late, and there's constant discussion. People are like, oh yeah, I love doing the overworld. And it's like, bro, you just run metas for 2 hours and then just do the loop over and over again. Like, and you just end up picking up like a ton of useless gear that you destroy to make ectoplasms to hand in for a relic quest. Or maybe you're like working on that one ascended piece because you probably just bought a full set of berserker gear and then literally don't need anything. Or like the things that you need are like so not specific or are so marginal that you don't care. Like, sure, yeah, if that's what we want, then it's probably a little bit easier to do. Duels from Bozier in the overworld, I think they'd rather put that effort into larger scale fates than put them into duels. They've expressed that making duels is very, very similar to making like a full end like actual encounter, because they have to design it effectively. It has to be QA'd, etc., etc. And so I've asked about duels in the overworld, and they've said that given the amount of effort that goes into making a duel and making any individual boss, that they probably don't want to do something like that. You also have to need people already wanting to be in that world. Like, just making duels doesn't inherently make most people want to be there. There was a lot of criticism about duels, you know, whether it be players who got them and weren't serious about them getting harassed by players who were, or players who, or what's it called? I had like a reverse scenario for that. Or they're not, yeah, you just ran into, or the players who wanted to do it having issues queuing in, which they did kind of add something for, but it was still kind of a pain. So you'd have to do it in a completely different way anyway, because the original way was not well received. And so doing all that, and then doing it in the overworld when we get 6 new overworld zones, like how do you get people to want to go into specific zones? What is the motivation for people to want to do that? Is it just going to be like 3 people in the zone doing fates to hope for a duel? Like, and then also, the point of the duels was you have to not get hit by attacks during the critical engagement. So do we need critical engagements, or do you just want to make the duels like you trade in bicolor gemstones for an attempt? And if you do, the whole point of duels is the people watching get a buff. What buff do they want? Bicolor gemstones, but why do they want bicolor gem? It's just one giant rigmarole, you know? So it's literally like, if you can't make fates more rewarding, there's no point in adding duels. And fates are like the one core thing. If you're going to do anything for the overworld, you need to make the fates more desired. It's why I've talked about it recently, how they really need to go back and reconsider fates and how players are motivated to do them, because they're not motivated to do them enough, in my opinion, at the moment. And that's, if you can't do that, there's no point in focusing any more effort into the overworld, because that's the crux of the overworld. So that whole system is the thing that needs to be looked at. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hello, hi, and good morning, Sir Happy. Good for you to know it's morning for me right now. A very long time watcher, first time asking a question. One thing I noticed with your content is your critique you give out, which I'm usually in agreement to, never really goes deeper into more critical topics such as job design or role design, to name a couple. I talk about that plenty, but we can keep going. Often when you hit these topics, you're more on the lighter side of things. I'm wondering why. I'm not. I usually just don't scream at the top of my lungs. Do you leave more deeper opinions for State of the Realm? No. I definitely don't here, because here usually is I have to get the answer out within 3 to 5 minutes. So there's no point in getting much deeper than that. But I do regularly talk about these things, so I'm not sure where this is coming from. Is it more of a preference of yours simply to withhold such opinions till feel more comfortable how you will express such opinions? No, I've expressed these opinions before. To be clear, I'm not saying you avoid expressing more harsh criticism. I've witnessed you expressing things in the past. I mean, why you don't take the time to get into the weeds of the problem? I do. Or what you possibly perceive the majority of players have. I do. Personally, I'm very much interested in what you think about job design in its current form. I've talked about job design in its current form more than I think I ever would care to. I have spoken about it so much that you know what, maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just haven't watched the videos where I talk about it, or any like situation where I have, and now I'm nauseated because it's been the same discussion for 4 years. Like, since it started in Shadowbringers, but in Endwalker, I literally talked about it like non-stop, and it's like, okay, well, it's the same thing as it was back then. So there's no point in continuing to beat a dead horse about the exact same topic every like month or two, you know. But I do pretty regularly express my thought. I mean, I mostly end up saying that at the end of the day, when I do play different jobs, I do feel like I'm playing a different job, but that the fundamental, what is actually accomplished in any given job, is effectively like the exact same thing. So it really becomes, as I call it, the access to your power, and how you actually get to the point where you're dealing the most damage. What setup do you need? What skill order do you have? What individual job mechanics you have to think about, whether it be like mudras or your heat or your battery gauge or your soul voice. But a lot of that stuff is so passive that a lot of times it just kind of lines up with the 2-minute window. So it just becomes, it's just a topic I've beaten to death for years, in depth. So I'm not sure where you're looking, where you're not looking, but I've definitely beaten this topic to death before. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. I don't have any question necessarily. Something funny I've been doing that has your influence. I became a shot caller for my stack in M7. Nice. In some mechs and M6S, I've realized the way I do calls identical to how you do it with the enunciation. So yeah, I sound like I'm asking a question, is what I always tell people. Really helps remembering things like when you say spreads later. Yeah, I'll just like, dude, people don't forget. That's the thing. If you do things like that, people don't forget. And so they're ready for it. When they hear it, they're like locked in, you know? Looking at look at your debuffs. Just want to point that out. Yeah, no, there's a reason I call it that way. It's because I want people to have to, like, I want them to hear just a part of what I'm saying and know the whole thing that I'm going to say. And it works for repetition. When you have to repeat something a lot, having a call out like that, that's kind of attention drawing, even if it's it sounds a little dumb, people don't forget it. And that works better for progress, in my opinion. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. Apologies if this is known, but I can't seem to locate a roadmap online that says high level various things 7.3x 4x will contain. I think I did one. But it's even then, again, it's a lot of guesswork because we didn't have exact dates on things. The recent Phantom Weapons, just really curious how long I'll have to work on that before. Oh, I mean, this is just patch cadence. Like, relics are every .x1 or .x5. Most people expect them to be in .x5. People were actually really surprised they were in .x1 this time. But yeah, no, Phantom Weapons are every major patch after they're introduced, but in like one of the sub patches. So if that's all you were looking for, that's all that is. That's just how relics have always worked. So we really don't have like specific roadmaps for that stuff. That's just how they work. Oh, they asked the second question here, I noticed. Hashtag Monday, Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hi. So it turns out I thought this patch was going to add new areas to explore in Occult Crescent. We knew that wasn't going to happen. So this is why I always say I have to remember that I watch all the live letters. I read interviews. So I knew this. Literally, I think before 7.2 even came out, they told us that Occult Crescent, they told us the exact schedule for Occult Crescent. Releasing the first zone, then nothing, then 3 jobs, and I think they said 6 jobs plus the new zone for .x5. I have to remember the exact thing, but like they literally laid it all out for exactly what there would be. And very specifically told us 7.3x would have nothing because we were getting Pilgrim's Traverse. Which we didn't know was Pilgrim's Traverse at the time, but we know now. It only added the Phantom Weapon steps. Do you know what patch? The new zone is 7.5x. We're getting 2 zones. We're getting the South Horn and the North Horn, and it's 7.5x. Yeah, they told us that. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, you know, freaking watcher, first time asker. Welcome. Over the years, I've started platinuming games as a hobby. Come across your plat videos. I was wondering how you'd rank them as for the mainline series. We haven't given any tips for 15s, 9s, and 10s. I've heard those are some of the most tedious. 15 wasn't that bad. 15's, so Royal Edition has the collection, and that's honestly the only bad spot. That's literally just pulling up a list of the collected items and grabbing them. That wasn't even in the original 15. The original 15 was like a 30-hour platinum. It was super quick. But the collected item ones for Royal are a little different. 9's, cheat. My only advice is to cheat. It's one of the worst ones, by far. Just cheat. Cheat for the 10,000 kills. Cheat for the, what was the other one? Not the Excalibur 2. Cheat for the jump rope game. Yeah, definitely cheat for those 2. And 10s is honestly not that bad. 10s and 13s are kind of similar in time. 10-2s was terrible, but 10s wasn't bad at all. So I think you'll be mostly fine. How you'd rank them as for the main line? 9 was the worst one. 9 was the one that if I didn't cheat would have been the worst one. Other than that, 10 and 13 are actually some of the hardest ones. But they're not even that bad. Like, those took me like 70 to 80 hours approximately with each. Actually, I don't remember how long 10 took. It's in the video. But, yeah, 10 wasn't too bad. 10 wasn't too bad. But, like, those are like, that's the worst batch. If you can't get through those, then you're going to have real problems. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy. Hi, I think we're getting close to the end of the questions here. Hope your week is going well. I recently started public speaking more. I've noticed I say and like a lot. Someone who's public speaking for a long time. How do you cut filler words when you stream and record live videos? Well, when you record live videos, well, I mean, I don't cut them. I say I mean or like. I say them plenty. I accept they're just part of my vernacular and that they're part of a lot of people's vernacular. So what are you going to do about that, right? Like, it's just a really normal thing that a lot of people do. Now, of course, this depends on what kind of public speaking you're doing. If you are doing public speaking where you can actually write out a script and have words in front of you, that will generally help stop it. And if you need to take those extra steps, then it goes a long way. You know, it's definitely worth doing. But the whole point of dialect and the point of speaking in language and communicating with others is that we have these habits because they're such commonly used habits across other people. Some people take notice of it and they don't even notice when they're doing it, but it's relatable in a sense. So if you want to feel more robotic, sometimes that's why speeches, like some people just tune out of them because they're so, they're just so robotic. How am I supposed to pay attention? This person clearly like really thought through every single thing that they actually wrote down, and it's so deliberate and it doesn't feel natural, and that really just turns people off. So it really depends on the situation of public speaking that you're doing. In a space like this where I'm a creator, we're talking about video games, I don't shy away from that, and I'll even laugh at myself doing it sometimes. But there's nothing wrong necessarily with doing it. Is it a great use of the English language? No, but the language is just the method with which we access dialect. So even if we're speaking in English, you know, the way that I speak in as being someone from New Jersey versus the way someone from California versus Texas, like even within the United States, we just have words that even though we're technically speaking the same language, like just are exclusive to our region's dialect. And so it's important to understand that when other people are speaking, and also when you're speaking to other people, they may not understand it, but they also have their own things. And then that can be a whole discussion in and of itself. So I just don't worry about it that much. I catch myself doing it. I maybe laugh once in a while, but that's about it. I can't worry about it. I just need to get my point across to other people. Hashtag Mr. Happy and a Monday. Well, it's actually Saturday. It's Sunday this time. Hello, Happy. How's it? It is how it is. Quick question. We clearly got more rewards as promised from DT from everything. Should we expect them to keep the scale of rewards amount come future expansions while they go down in favor of Mogstation items? Well, okay, so the development team doesn't make Mogstation items. There's actually a whole separate team that is specifically designed for Mogstation stuff. This was established back when the Mogstation first came out, and they actually have a completely different director of operations when it comes to the creation of items. I don't remember the woman's name. I believe Yoshida has mentioned it. All he says is he's afraid of her. So say that what you will. But they don't go, oh, let's just take that and put it in the Mogstation. It's more like the Mogstation or the team in charge of it comes up with what they're going to do, informs Yoshi P, and then he has to make sure that that both teams aren't like simultaneously kind of working on the same thing in a sense. So those two teams, they both report to him, but he's afraid of her, and she's generally the one in charge of deciding what things will go there. So they're not like, oh, you know, we have to make sure we have so many rewards in the Mogstation versus so many, or things that are in the Mogstation, things that aren't. That's not how it works in general. But this is probably to be expected to be normal in the future. I would expect things to go back down. Don't expect to be one-to-one for exact reward being the exact same way. That's just another pattern for them to fall into in that case. But generally expect it to be about this. And it looks like this is the last question. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy. Hello. First time question after having watched for a while. Welcome. I've been really wanting to get through a Savage tier, and the real life got in the way for the first Arcadian tier. I want to attempt this one. I've gotten 750 gear for Dark Knight. Question is kind of in two parts. First being your thoughts on attempting a raid tier from the beginning, 4 odd months after its release. The second being any tips, advice for myself to keep a note as I go through the party finder. So, for the first of all, best of luck. Raiding is always a little frightening for people to get into, but it is what it is. You just kind of dive in a little bit. For your thoughts on attempting a raid tier from the beginning 4 odd months after its release. So you're saying, like, what is it like doing it now versus those first 4 or so months? It's a little tougher because people do move on to other content. The people who are populating the PF goes down, and the general quality goes down as well. So you can get hard stuck in a tier for a lot longer if you start it later versus if you start a tier when it first comes out. At the very least, as long as you are a player who is considerate of your own skill and considerate of how you affect others when you're playing, you'll generally make pretty good progress. A lot of the times when you run into big issues in the PF, there's an air of arrogance behind it, and I'll say this, unearned arrogance, where players just generally don't perform well, but don't in any way reflect upon how they could perform better, or don't care, or take it out on other people, or pass the blame, etc., etc. Generally, when there's lack of success, that's usually the reason. Now, of course, there is sometimes a reason where a player just doesn't learn as fast, and that's an important thing to know as well. So it's really just a matter of accepting that how quick of a learner are you? How many resources do you want to have at your disposal? Are you willing to do something like, you know, watch the guide beforehand, or maybe put a diagram up on the second monitor and figure out a good time to reference it? How comfortable are you with your tank cooldowns as a Dark Knight? You have 750 gear for a Dark Knight. You could get more, so I wouldn't wait to raid until you have more. But when you're not raiding, consider about the things you can do to make raiding better. You know, make sure you have food, make sure you have pots. Oh, I can upgrade this tombstone piece. You know, oh, could I maybe grab a reward from this and upgrade that? So there's a lot of individual aspects to it that you can consider. But the bottom line is, you're just jumping into a group of 7 other randos, and good luck. The only thing you can do is be your best player. And if you're doing that, then you get better, and eventually it gets faster. There's a reason why good players who just PF get through the PF faster. It's because they themselves are not the problem. So by taking out potentially 1/8 of the people who are the problem, they increase their odds of success by 12.5%. And then it's just a matter. And also, one big thing is when a tier is brand new, a lot of people make friends. They like add people like, oh, that person was really good. Let me see if I can add them. Maybe we could do like PFs together and stuff like that. And then that's sometimes how statics are formed, and it works really well. The second thing, any tips, advice for myself to keep notes to go through the party finder? Just, I think everything I said in the first part kind of qualifies for the second answer as well. You just got to be confident in yourself and the job that you're playing, and think about improving. If you're thinking about improving, my cats are just going crazy today. Then, if you're thinking about improving, then generally you probably will improve, because if you just do like, I'm just going to do it and I don't really care, then yeah, that's how things can tend to be a little bit disastrous. But anyway, that was actually the last question for this week's Q&A. So that's going to be a wrap for this week. Thanks again for everyone for asking your questions. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section below. I will hopefully have a handful more videos out this week, and I will maybe be spending some stream time to make sure that some of them actually get done. But with that, thank you all for watching. I'll see all of you next week. Until then, I bid you adieu. Bye-bye.